Hey, Joe Gilder here from Home Studio Corner. This handsome devil is Brent Milligan. I've known Brent since I moved back to Nashville about 10 years ago, and he is a force in the music industry here in Nashville, specifically the Christian music industry. To this day, I still find out stuff that he's worked on or played on that I didn't know. Big name artist, big projects. He's been nominated for Grammys. He's won a few Dove Awards. He's played on just about everything, including he's played bass on the huge DC Talk album, Jesus Freak. He played bass on one of those songs. He's just had his hands on a lot of stuff over the years. And he and I have been friends the last few years as well and gotten to know each other really well. And there are a lot of things that I've learned from him, and I've got a cool thing I want to announce at the end of this video. But for now, I want to share with you eight things that I've learned from Brent Milligan over the years. So to summarize, Brent is a producer, multi-instrumentalist, songwriter, composer. He plays everything from bass guitar is his main instrument, but he's a ridiculous guitar player, great cellist. He can play keys. He can really just do it all. But I feel like probably where he shines the most is as a producer. Thing number one, put yourself around good people. It seems so obvious, and it's almost not worth saying, but for folks like you and me who sit in our basements and make music, it's really easy to do it all ourselves. We can technically do it all between the instruments that we can play and what we can achieve with software. But there is something magical that happens every time you collaborate with another human being. We're creative beings, and then getting together with someone else just amplifies the creativity. It's kind of like one person can be creative by himself or herself, but two people have the creativity of like four people. I don't know if that makes sense, but there's this exponential creativity that happens when you collaborate. Now, I, for one, am not super great at that. I do collaborate. I haven't programmed drums on one of my songs in years, so I always have Tim Horsley play drums and my brother-in-law Joel play bass, and that's kind of the extent of my collaboration aside from a few outside things. But hands down, whenever I work with more musicians, the end result is better. So if you find yourself in that man cave, isolated, only working on your own music, find a way to branch out. I've seen this happen time and time again with my VIP members. Go to homestudiocorner.com/VIP, and where people from the UK and Florida are collaborating and making great music. So you don't have to be in the same town. You don't have to be in Nashville to collaborate with really great musicians because of this little thing called the internet. Thing number two ties into thing number one. Music is about more than just talent and skill. It's about relationships. You interview anyone that's very successful in their fields, especially in the music field, you'll hear them drop names all over the place. I'm not talking about name dropping, I'm talking about relationships that they have. So take Brent as an example. Moved from Louisiana up to Nashville to be a bass player. Connected with a guy named Charlie Peacock. You might have heard of him. Charlie Peacock produces bands like Switchfoot, DC Talk, and a bajillion others. And that relationship led to Brent getting to play on things that he might not have gotten to play on otherwise. And then those relationships led to other relationships, led to other relationships. So while I know that networking can seem like a dirty word, relationships aren't. And if you're not actively bringing in new relationships and new people that you could possibly connect with, collaborate with, make music with, or maybe just connect each other to other people, then you're probably missing out on a big source of both creativity and even potential revenue if you're looking to make money from your music. Thing number three, humility goes a long way. If you met Brent on the street, or you started coming to our church and you played on the worship team with him from time to time, it would take you quite a long time to put the pieces together about who he actually is. First time I played at our church 10 years ago, I was on acoustic, he was on electric. I had no idea who he was. And he was asking, I was using two capos, this cut capo thing at the time, and he came over and asking, hey, what are you doing there? And, I just was like, oh, let me teach you something about capos, which is just funny. But he's over there, this monster of a musician with huge credential lists, but he doesn't act like it. And that makes him seem and feel very approachable. That's really been the case for a lot of big name, very talented musicians that I know. On the whole, they're a humble group of people, and they don't go out there and feel the need to flaunt their successes and their achievements. They're just kind of there, and you almost have to dig it out of them, which to me has this kind of charming, approachable feel to it. Number four, don't be afraid to ask for feedback. This goes along with the humility bit, but just because Brent has a lot of credentials under his name doesn't mean he doesn't still ask for feedback and advice from other people. I know a friend of mine who's kind of up-and-coming songwriter in Nashville, and Brent will get feedback from him. Hey, what do you think about this? How does this sound? How do you like the production on this? He's not in that place of arrogance of, I know best. He's constantly getting feedback, and that's something we could all learn from. Number 5, even the best musicians struggle with insecurity. Now, I don't know if Brent wants me to talk about this, but he shared with me before that even when he works on big, major label projects, he has these moments where that imposter syndrome will rear its ugly head, and where he'll feel that he doesn't know what he's doing and that it's gonna bomb and everyone's gonna hate it. But yet he still continues to have great success and to produce really great sounding records. The insecurity is not a sign that you're not ready. It's probably a sign that you're on the right track. If someone like Brent Milligan, and I bet you could ask any big name engineer producer, if they were truly honest with you, they would tell you that they feel like a fraud all the time, but they manage to, instead of being ruled by that and just pulling themselves out of the game, they just keep playing and they figure out a way to work with that instead of being crippled by it. Takeaway: if you feel like you're not good enough, you're just like everybody else. Number 6, here's a more practical one. When you're producing a song, think in terms of hooks. A buddy of mine who worked with Brent told me that one day he asked Brent, hey, what are you thinking about when you're playing a bass line? And his words, Brent said something along the lines of, I like to think in terms of hooks. Rather than just playing the notes, playing the chords, I want to find different melodic pieces and elements to put into my bass playing that fit the song, of course, but also that on their own are really catchy. And in Nashville we talk about hooks a lot. What's going to hook the listener and get them listening? What's going to give them something to hum later when they're not listening to your song? If you've listened to my EP called Someone to Blame, Brent Milligan actually played bass on that project, and you can hear it's very melodic bass parts, which completely changed how I produced it as the artist engineer, because he played such interesting melodic stuff. I let my guitars be a little more understated so we could hear the bass part. It's that kind of thing. Number 7, do a little bit of everything. You might think that a guy like Brent is in the studio 100% of the time producing for artists, and he does do that a lot, but he also goes out on tour. He plays bass or cello or any other instrument with various artists that he's worked with. He'll just go on a weekend tour with Third Day and then come back and be in the studio. He also will play cello for kind of random events, a wedding or some sort of like fundraiser thing, and they'll hire him in to come play cello. He'll even play bass on projects for folks like you and me. I called him up, said, hey, I've got a session coming up. My brother-in-law Joel wasn't available. Can you play? And he said, actually, yeah, I had to cancel a trip. I'll be out there. And he gets no credibility from playing with Joe Gilder, but he was available, and it turned out really, really well, and it was really fun. And he also will even record, remotely for folks like you. If you've got a track and you contact him, he can fit it in his schedule. You send him your song, and he'll play bass on it. So he's not. I think we have too many people that want to say, I only want to do this one thing. And there's some good things to say about that. But just about every musician that I know has their hands in lots of different things. They're not just doing one specific thing, probably because that helps them stay creative. If one day, you're playing on a project, the next day you're producing it, the next day you're singing a vocal, the creativity gets to kind of stay moving rather than always doing the exact same thing over and over. So don't get so hung up on, I know a lot of people that email me say, all I want to do is mix. That's great. You should mix a lot. But don't turn your nose up at other opportunities that might present themselves to do things like live sound or engineering a session or playing an instrument you really didn't think you were that good at because somebody needs it, and that could turn into a whole new opportunity for you. And finally, number 8, one of the biggest things I've learned from Brent is good production goes a long way. He was telling me about tracks that he'll produce for people. So specifically, someone hires him to play bass. So somebody like you and me, basement musician, send him a track, hey, can you play bass on this? And he'll play the bass part. But then he'll say, hey, you know what? It would be really great if there was this guitar part over here. And then he lays that down. And it'd be really cool if we had this keyboard pad here. And he just starts kind of building a production around the raw tracks that he was given. He was just hired to play bass, but he produces it a little bit. And he says he's been surprised how many times people will look at him if they're in the room or when they reply back via email or whatever, and they'll say, I had no idea. Because so many people think in terms of, here's the song, I'm going to play the chords, I'm going to record the instruments, everybody's going to play the right chords, and we're done. And that couldn't be further from the truth of what makes a really great production. It's putting the right instruments in the right place and then having them all play the right parts. There's an element of almost composition to it, of arranging. It's not just everybody play the chart as written, bang out the chords, and we're done for the day. Maybe that's a good starting place, but there's so much more that goes into producing on top of that that really takes a song from being, okay, to wow, that's amazing. And it's with that final point hanging in the air that I want to talk about a special event that Brent's going to do with me a week from today on June 20th, Thursday, June 20th, 2019 at 8 p.m. Central Time. We're going to host a live webinar for a limited number of people where Brent is going to come in and just pour out his producing music, awesome, award-winning knowledge for us to soak up. I've learned all these great things really just kind of through just being around Brent and having dinner with him and things like that. But we've never really sat down and had him go point by point through all these things that he's thinking about when he's producing, when he's playing, how he runs a session, how he stays motivated, how he deals with all the issues that come up with music, how he made his living and continues to make his living as a producer. So much wisdom to be learned from this dude. I'm excited that we're going to have this webinar. If you're interested, it is a live event. We will have recordings, but you'll need to buy a ticket today to make sure you can get the recordings afterward. But I hope you'll make it live so you can ask your questions and get your specific answers for your specific problems from the man himself, Brent Milligan. So there's a link on the screen, should be a link below this video. Just go to homestudiocorner.com/Brent and you'll have the information there to get your ticket. And I'm so excited. Hope to see you there.